through DNA after 58 years. She walked to school alone at 9. She never made it home. Found hours later bound with her own shoelaces. Strangled, left in an abandoned coal pit. No name tied to the killer for 58 years. 3 generations of investigators hit dead ends. Her parents died without an answer. An 18-year-old student began digging through DNA. A distant relative's profile pointed to a local name. That name belonged to a man who lived 6 blocks away. He died in 1980, before anyone knew. This case became one of the oldest cold cases solved by DNA. By the end of this video, you will know how the truth emerged. You will hear the moment a single strand of DNA closes a chapter. You will meet the people who refuse to let silence win. Do not skip. Every detail matters. Stay until the final reveal. Your view of this town will shift. The cold air over Hazleton held a stillness that morning. It was March 18, 1964. A day that began with hope inside one small home. A day that would tear that same home apart by nightfall. 9-year-old Marise Ann Chiverella stepped outside with her schoolbooks hugged close to her chest. She wanted to prove something to herself. She wanted to walk alone for the first time. Her mother watched her from the door. Her father had already left for work. The house sat on a quiet street. Children walked that route each day. Her mother felt a push of doubt, yet she allowed her daughter to go. The walk took only 10 minutes. Marise never arrived. The sun rose higher over the coal region. Workers began their morning shifts. Smoke moved above the old mines. A thin crust of frost melted on the ground. Somewhere inside that landscape, something had gone wrong. This is the story of a child who trusted her world. It is the story of a family struck down before anyone understood what evil lived nearby. It is the story of a crime that stayed sealed in ice for 58 years. A story that waited for science to reach it. A story that waited for someone who refused to let silence win. You will hear what the investigators faced. You will see how each clue failed. You will follow the slow lift of truth from a single strand of DNA. You will meet the people who hide in plain view. This is not a story of closure. It is a story of truth that arrived far too late. Prepare yourself. The path you walk now is the same path Marise walked that morning. Stay close. This story turns darker. The search began fast. By mid-morning, teachers noticed the empty seat. A call went to her home. Her mother felt her chest collapse. She ran into the street and looked in every direction. Neighbors joined her. The police took the call that afternoon. Within hours, officers found her body near an abandoned coal pit. The pit sat close to an old mining road. People rarely passed through that area. The walls around the pit looked jagged, pools of water collected at the bottom. The air inside the pit held the scent of rust and soil. She had been assaulted. Her hands were tied with her shoelaces. Her neck showed marks of force. The ground around her gave off a pattern of struggle. The officers knew right away that this was the work of someone who felt no fear, someone familiar with the land, someone who brought a child there with intent. When her father arrived at the scene, officers stopped him at a distance. He dropped to his knees. His hands trembled. People said he spoke his daughter's name through short breaths. Her mother had collapsed back at the house. A neighbor stayed with her until she slept from exhaustion and shock. The police sealed the area. They collected fibers. They collected soil samples. They searched the ground for footprints. They looked at every tire track on the dirt road. They brought in dogs. The trail stopped near the pit. The killer left no clear route behind him. Hazleton froze. Parents walked their children to school. Doors stayed locked. People whispered about strangers. People wondered who among them had done this. The local papers reported the story for weeks. The community raised money for her funeral. Her classmates walked behind the coffin. Her mother walked with support from relatives on each side. Her father stayed silent the entire time. Investigators refused to let the file rest. Still, months passed, years passed, nothing moved. By the early 1970s, the case reached a second generation of detectives. They reopened witness lists. They tracked old suspects. They waited for someone to talk. Many suspects had moved away. Some died. Some refused to speak. None connected to the crime with direct evidence. The case entered a strange sleep. Stay with the story. What comes next changes everything. By the 80s, forensic tools had advanced. Not enough to solve a case like this. Yet the investigators kept the evidence secure. They stored the clothing in climate-controlled conditions. They kept soil samples. They kept rope fragments. They kept a swab that held a trace of biological material from the killer. Detectives came and went. Some retired, some died. New detectives entered the unit. Each one looked at the file. Each one felt frustration. Each one told the family that they would try again. Yet nothing broke the silence around the crime. Marise's parents aged. Her mother often sat near the window where her daughter had walked out that morning. Her father worked long hours and avoided conversation about the case. People noticed how his hair turned gray in a single year. People noticed how his shoulders slumped forward. The loss shaped them in ways no words could explain.
In the late 1990s, DNA testing reached a point where investigators felt hope again. They sent the preserved biological sample to a lab. The lab extracted a profile. The profile revealed one important fact. The sample came from a male. That profile went into national databases. No match. The file returned to its shelf. More years passed. Her parents died. Relatives took hold of old family photographs. One relative kept a scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings about the case. Another relative kept a lock of her hair. They wanted to honor her memory. They also wanted answers. By the early 2000s, detectives revisited the file again. They worked with new DNA experts. They built a stronger profile. They compared it to updated databases. Again, no match. The killer had never been arrested. The killer had never submitted DNA for any other case. He had lived undetected. He had died without confession. The story seemed trapped forever. Then something happened that no one expected. You will want to hear every detail. The shift starts now. In 2020, an 18-year-old college student named Eric Schubert sat in his room with a laptop open. He had a strong interest in genealogy. He had solved missing person cases by tracing family trees. He studied DNA records. He followed the rise of forensic genealogy. He looked for cases that needed fresh attention. He came across the name of Marise Chiverella. He read the case summary. He felt drawn to the story. He reached out to the Pennsylvania State Police. His email was short and direct. He offered to help. Some investigators felt uncertain about letting a young student into a case of this scale. They soon realized his skill brought something new to the table. Genealogy was rising as a tool. Cold cases around the country were moving again through this method. The investigators agreed to cooperate with him. The lab uploaded the unknown killer's DNA into public genealogy databases. These databases held profiles submitted by people who explored their own ancestry. The results showed small matches, not close relatives, distant relatives. The matches pointed to a wide family tree. Schubert built that tree branch by branch. He identified relatives who shared small fragments of DNA with the killer. He traced migrations. He traced births and marriages. He traced deaths. He built a network through thousands of names. He narrowed the focus to a cluster of relatives from northeastern Pennsylvania. That cluster is tied back to a family with multiple branches in the region. One branch involved a man named James Paul Forte. Forte had lived in Hazleton. He lived about 6 blocks from the Chiverella family home in 1964. He had been 22 years old at the time of the crime. He had a history of violence. Police records showed that he had harassed women. He had been arrested for assault in the early 1970s. He died in 1980 at age 38. This name surged through the investigation like a current. Detectives felt the puzzle forming. They obtained a court order to exhume Forte's body. They collected DNA from his remains. The lab compared it to the DNA from the crime scene. The match was exact. 58 years after the crime, the truth stood in front of them. The killer had been a young man who lived down the street. He had walked the same roads as the Chiverella family. He had returned to his life after the crime. He had died without anyone knowing what he had done. The investigators met with surviving family members of Marise. They told them the truth. Some family members cried for hours. Some felt relief. Some felt anger. Some felt hollow. All said the same thing. They wished her parents had lived to hear this. You will see the deeper story now. It is not only about a name, it is about the cost of time. Police reviewed Forte's history. They found a disturbing pattern. In 1974, he was arrested for threatening a woman with a firearm. In 1978, he was arrested again for assault. He had a record of cruelty. He had avoided long jail time. People who knew him described him as someone who kept to himself. He lived alone for long stretches. He had trouble controlling his temper. Yet he blended into the community enough to escape suspicion. His death in 1980 prevented any chance of confession or trial. Hazleton residents who heard the news reacted with shock. For years, many suspected an outsider. Many believed no local could commit a crime against a child. The truth destroyed that belief. Reporters reached out to surviving siblings of Marise. They said that the answer brought peace, but not relief. They explained how the case shaped their entire family. They explained how their mother never recovered from the loss. They explained how their father spoke fewer words after the crime. Investigators held a press conference. They explained the breakthrough. They explained the work of genealogy. They thanked Schubert for his effort. They used his work to show the power of collaboration. A young student had pushed the wheels of justice that older tools could not move. Stay here. The weight of the story deepens. The truth circles back to the girl who walked with hope that morning. Let us return to Marise. Her family described her as quiet. She liked to read. She liked school. Her teacher said she paid attention to every lesson. She helped her mother with house tasks. She followed her older siblings around the yard. She wanted to explore the world in small steps. She believed the 10-minute walk to school was a mark of new freedom. Her mother struggled with the decision to let her go alone. She wanted to protect her. She also wanted her to grow. That tension lived in every parent. That morning, the balance leaned toward trust. No one blamed her. Her sons and daughters later said she never forgave herself. The route she walked passed through familiar streets. Neighbors saw her. None suspected danger. The killer saw an opportunity. He acted with speed. He overpowered her. He forced her into the secluded area of the coal pit. The violence that followed lasted only minutes. Yet those minutes destroyed decades of life around her.
Detectives believe Forte offered her a ride. She refused. He forced her. They believe he knew the pit well. He used it as a place to hide with his victim. He left her there without fear of discovery. He assumed no one would find a trace of him. Evidence preservation proved him wrong. A single biological trace survived time. That trace cut through 58 years like a blade. You should follow this part until the end. It holds the meaning of this entire case. The breakthrough in this case showed the power of persistence. Investigators held on to the evidence through decades of slow progress. Labs improved their tools. Genealogists traced roots that earlier generations did not know how to track. Each step supported the next. The story also showed the cruel weight of time. The killer died before anyone uncovered his secret. The parents died without knowing the truth. The community carried guilt and suspicion across generations. The solution arrived too late for many. Yet truth carries value even when delayed. It gives names, it restores order, it ends false suspicion, it shows the reach of science, it honors the victim.
It gives the family a final piece of the puzzle. In 2022, the Pennsylvania State Police closed the case with a public announcement. They explained how the solution came from genetic genealogy. They explained how a young student built the tree that led to the killer. They explained the history of the file. They explained the heartbreak surrounding the loss of the parents. The case became the fourth oldest cold case in American history solved through DNA. It became the oldest solved case in Pennsylvania. It entered the record as an example of both tragedy and determination. Reporters interviewed Schubert. He spoke with humility. He explained his role with simple language. He credited the investigators. He said that the case showed the strength of teamwork. He never expected to hold such a heavy role. He simply wanted to help. His work changed history. This story reaches toward the final truth now. Stay with it. The community of Hazleton reflected on the past. People remembered the fear that spread through the town in 1964. They remembered the locked doors and anxious parents. They remembered the funerals and the silence. They remembered how the name of Marise stayed whispered for years. Some residents said they always wondered if the killer lived among them. Some said they suspected a drifter. Some said the truth forced them to look at their memories through a new lens. Relatives stood near her grave after the truth came out. They placed flowers on the ground. Some spoke short prayers. Some touched the headstone. They said her name out loud. They felt the presence of her parents at that moment. One relative broke down and said that the truth felt like a release of pressure that had built over decades. Another relative said that the answer did not repair the past but gave shape to the pain. The investigators finally closed the file. They placed the documents in boxes. Those boxes will rest in archives. The case will stand as a reminder of what happens when a single evil act breaks a community and how the pursuit of truth refuses to fade. Marise's photograph appears in articles about the case. Her face holds a soft expression. Her hair is combed neatly. Her eyes look straight ahead. She looks like a girl preparing for a school day. She looks innocent. She looks confident. She looks unaware of the danger near her home. Her story now appears in lectures about forensic genealogy. Her case appears in training sessions for investigators. Her name helps shape the future of cold case work. This final part brings the story full circle. The strength of this story lies in how people refused to let her disappear. Investigators tried, scientists advanced. A young student stepped forward with confidence. Her family held her memory high. The truth rose from that effort. This story forces a difficult lesson. Evil sometimes hides in plain view. It sometimes looks like an ordinary neighbor. It sometimes walks the same streets as the children in a community. It sometimes escapes justice for decades. Yet truth finds a way to surface. As the case file closed in 2022, the investigators stood in front of reporters. They honored the work of 3 generations of officers. They honored the advancement of DNA science. They honored the courage of the family. They honored Marise. Her life ended at 9 years old. Her story reached the world 58 years later. People now know her name far beyond Hazleton. They know the struggle her family faced. They know the effort it took to identify the killer. This story holds anger. It holds sadness. It holds perseverance. It holds a small spark of justice at the end of a long road. As you finish this documentary, remember the path you walked that morning. Remember how short it was. Remember how quickly danger struck. Remember the strength of people who refused to let silence win. Her name lives on because the truth survived. And the truth revealed the man who thought he escaped time. Thank you for watching. Hold Marise's name with you. Her story proves truth can travel across decades. 3 generations refused to let the file die. A single strand of DNA finally gave the family an answer. If this moved you, share the video with others. Subscribe for more true crime stories that follow the lines of evidence to the end.